that the reason I was created, the reason I was made, was to help people to fulfill their full God-given potential. And people from all around the world would seek me out for this gift that God was giving me, a gift to enable people to fulfill their full God-given potential, a gift to identify the barriers in people's minds and remove those barriers so that they do fulfill their full God-given potential. I was very skeptical when the first person gave me that word. I am generally quite a skeptical guy, very rational. It sounded very grandiose to me. I thought their cheese had fallen off their cracker a little bit, saying those very grand words that people from all around the world would seek me out, that God was going to give me a gift to help people to fulfill their full potential. Just sounded too grand. That was from a woman in Australia. A month later, at a prayer meeting, I met a pastor from Jamaica, didn't know anything about me, and gave me the same word. He said God was speaking to him that day and shared exactly word for word the same message that the woman from Australia gave me. And then I went over to America, speaking at a conference there, and the main speaker gave me the same words. And everyone in the room at this conference, a couple hundred people, all prayed for me to receive this gift from God, to identify barriers in people's minds and remove those barriers. And so it was wonderful. People prayed for me at that time, 200 people. And again, that same power, that same presence that I felt first in my grandmother's hospital room, that I felt when I was baptized with the Holy Spirit in my neighbour's car in 2000, when I was 18. I felt it again when I was prayed for. So again, what's the fruit from all of that? Is there fruit? Did it draw me closer to God? Yes, it did. I've worked with over 4,000 people around the world. Just as God said, I would work with people from all around the world. They would seek me out. I've never advertised my work as a psychologist. I have one practice. And I've worked in elite sports, mostly, sports psychologist, and help footballers, for example, to play for their country. This is young players who are just looking to make a breakthrough and make their debuts and get that first professional contract, really. They've all went on to, many of the people I worked with have went on to play for their country and go on to play in the top league in the world, in the English Premiership. Some of them went on to the World Cup. Some even, one was playing in the Champions League the other night there and scored for Aston Villa in the Champions League. So yeah, call to psychology. So I'm going to bring this up to date now and just talk about the last few years. Interestingly, I'm working with a business client just now. This is what God can do. God is the God of the impossible. Nothing's impossible for him. All things are possible for God. And a couple of years ago, I started working with a man. He had just started his own business. Really quite an inspirational character, hard-working guy. Really struggles to read and write. And he was in sales, car sales, and then he started working for a waste management company as a salesperson and decided, I'm going to start my own company. And not long after starting it, he asked me to help him to set the culture in the company, to work with his employees and his key personnel, to set the culture, to help them perform at their best. My goodness, that company's not even 4 years old yet. And this year it's going to make £1 million profit. It's incredible. This guy who can hardly read and write, he's just bought a house with a swimming pool and bought his wife a Porsche. Culture is really important. And I've been asked to help change culture in not-for-profit organisations. And that's really I would say, my third career. I split my time now between my psychology and helping charities, not-for-profit organisations, to help them to become more sustainable, to develop their services, to fulfil their full potential, to make sure they're providing the best service that they can to their clients. So the first one I really worked with, it's going back to 2018 now, is West Lothian Food Bank, an organisation who had a £100,000 turnover at the time, were struggling to pay their wages, and they only had 2 employees. And I went in one day a week as a consultant. I really felt God was calling me to do that. I'd heard that the food bank was in trouble, and I'd committed to praying for a week for the food bank. God, you need to send someone to help the food bank get over their financial difficulties. And at the end of this 1 week of praying for this food bank, I'd never set foot in the food bank. didn't know anything about it particularly, apart from it was struggling and it was in my local area. God spoke to me, Holy Spirit spoke to me and said, I'm sending someone, I'm sending you. And I'd never worked with a not-for-profit organisation like that before, to build them up as a business, really. But I was faithful to the word that was given to me. And I went into the food bank. I got a job there working with them 1 day a week. And incredibly, that £100,000 turnover organisation, within a few years, it went from £100,000 to £1.3 million turnover, went from 2 employees to 28, having no vans to having a fleet of 4 vans, and just amazing miracles along the way. One, for example, was I'd negotiated with the local council to get a new building rent-free for 5 years, which they agreed to, and we moved into this new place, which was really fit for purpose for us. But there was waste ground beside it. And I remember the first time we were there, and there was a bit of a rainstorm happening outside, and water started to come in off this waste ground because it was on a slope, and the water started to move into the warehouse. And I was there putting sandbags down to stop this water coming in. And I prayed a very frustrated prayer. Lord, why have you brought us here? This is a disaster. There's water coming into the building. This is rubbish, basically. Very frustrated. And looking out over this waste ground that was flooding and the water running down into the warehouse. And I put my head down, my head dropped out with despair, praying this prayer, and I'm watching the water move past my feet. And God spoke to me and said, I brought you here for a purpose. Look up again. You're going to grow food here. And I looked up again, and I looked at this waste ground, and I saw a vision of this waste ground. I could see polytunnels full of food growing, 3 big commercial-sized polytunnels. And I could see all these black boxes, which were raised beds. I'd never seen anything like that before, all these raised beds growing food. And I had this very clear vision. I looked all around, I could see it. I'd never seen anything like that before. That had never happened to me before. But God spoke to say, this is why you're here. You're going to grow a garden, build a garden, you're going to grow food. I thought, wow, that's going to cost a lot of money. But within an hour of having that vision, I kid you not, within an hour, one of my contacts at the local council, at the local government, Wesleyan Council, phoned me up to say they just received a whole lot of money from the Scottish Government for something called place-based investment, which was to turn derelict ground into an asset for the community. He said, we need to turn this money around pretty quickly. Does the food bank have any projects where they could take waste ground, derelict ground, and do something for community benefit? I said, well, yeah, we've actually been thinking for a long time about turning the ground at the side of the warehouse that we moved into a garden that grows food. They said, that sounds like a brilliant idea. I'll send you the forms. And within a month, we had £200,000 of a grant to go and build this. And we built it. And we built a garden with 3 commercial polytunnels and 357 raised beds. And we grew 6 tons of food that first summer that we put that in. So I was with the food bank for 5 years, and I really think I was there for when COVID hit. When COVID hit, we set up the West Lothian Food Network, which the council asked if I would spearhead it, if I would pull together some of the food charities in the area to have a COVID response. And it started off with a meeting of 12 charities, and we grew to 38 charities over a 3-year period. And we brought in over £2 million worth of funding in that time. And amazingly, we provided over 3 million meals for people in our region of Scotland who had lost their jobs through COVID, people that were on 0-hour contracts that were dependent on their getting hours and to put food on the table and to pay the rent and things like that. And we served thousands of people every week for a 3-year period. And that was quite miraculous, all of that coming together. Moving on from that, I finished working with the food bank at Christmas there, and just the year before, God spoke to me out of the blue, that still small voice. Back in 2022, God spoke to me out of the blue to say, I would like you to go to St John's Church in Linlithgow. It's a church I'd never heard of before. Had to go and Google it. But we moved church and went to this church in Linlithgow, a beautiful town in West Lothian. And 2 weeks after I'd arrived in this church, the senior pastor of the church said that I think God's brought you here for a building project. The church were involved in a community asset transfer. This is where a local government building, which has now become surplus to requirements for the local government, rather than selling the building for just commercially, they have to now, as part of government legislation, make it available to the community to use the building. They have to prove a business model that they can actually use the building. And the church was setting up a charity and working with 30 other community organisations to take this asset transfer. It was going to be the biggest, it is the biggest in West Lothian's history. But the problem was it was going to cost £1 million, and they had no money at all. But my 20 years in construction as a quantity surveyor, my specialist kind of area was construction costs. So I looked at all the cost reports and prayed over them. And I could see that it wasn't going to cost £1 million to refurbish the building, to get it into a fit state for the community. It was going to cost a lot less, probably about half when you analyse the costs and go through all the assumptions. And I was appointed to lead this project from the refurb point of view, to get this deal over the line with the council and actually convert the building into a fit community centre. And one of the things about God is he's so interested in everything, in the details of everything. I believe he called me to be part of that project, and I believe that he had all the resources available to make that project work. And I prayed and said, Lord, how are we going to do this? We don't have any money. We don't have enough money to do it. How do we do this? And through prayer, I felt God speak to me to say, well, the first quarter of the building is to be for long-term leases, spaces for businesses and charities to lease, and offer them a rental holiday. If they sign up to a long-term lease, give them a rental holiday of 3 months. In which they use the 3 months rent to refurb those spaces to their own specification at their own cost. So nobody had thought of that. None of the experts that have been involved in the project, from the council's point of view, from Scottish Enterprise, none of them thought of that. The first prayer that I prayed, that was the first thing that came up. Everybody agreed to it. We put it out there, and we leased out 100% of the spaces in a couple of months, all signed up. And that was a quarter of the building refurbished at zero cost to us, and we already had money coming into the project. Fast forward a little bit, the project was completed on time, on budget. The budget was set at £250,000, and the whole building was refurbed for £250,000. So successful that West Lothian Council said, we've never seen a project of this magnitude completed on time and on budget. Could you help us with another project? And they got us to consult on another project because they had never delivered a project on time and on budget in their history. But we did. Every step of the way, we prayed over each step of the way. A couple of little miracles that I want to share along the story, which were incredible. As we were working on this project, we got the keys on the 8th of January and refurbishing the building away. And we'd actually didn't allow, there wasn't enough money to landscape the building outside. And after a few months, it was starting to bother me. Really bothered me that we're going to make the inside of the building look great. The fabric of the building was going to look great, but the curb appeal, there was no curb appeal. There was nothing, no great appeal to the building from the outside because it was very dark and dingy. So I prayed a very simple prayer. Lord, would you demonstrate to us that you're in this project? Will you give us money for landscaping, to landscape this building? I reckon and I'd worked it out, I reckon that we could actually do the whole project for about £12,500 to landscape. Building's 100 metres long, so you're talking about 240 metres of perimeter around the building. And I'd worked out how many plants it would take, and our volunteers could put it in, and we could do this for £12,500. Lord, would you show us that you're in this? And I kid you not, the same day, it was only a matter of a few hours later, someone from the church, I never told anybody I prayed that prayer, never told a soul. I just prayed that prayer between me and God. And someone from the church came and spoke to me, asked if they could speak to me. I was very busy with the refurb. So yeah, you can come and speak to me over lunch. I'll have a lunch break at 12:30. And this person said, can I speak to you in private? And they said that in my quiet time this morning, as I was praying, spending some time with God, this person said, I felt God speak to me. And Lithgow is quite an affluent area. There are some very poor areas within it too, but there's a bit of affluence. And this person said that God spoke to me this morning to say that I was to make a donation to pay for landscaping for this building. Is there landscaping to be done? I said, yeah, we've got no budget for landscaping. It would be fantastic for us. It would finish the whole project off if we had money for landscaping. I said, how much were you thinking about? And the woman says, well, God was very specific to me this morning. God told me I was to give you £12,500. So they did. They made a donation that day. Money was in our account that day. And we did the landscaping. And as we were putting the landscaping in, which we were rushing to try and get it finished for our opening day, all the trustees told me, you don't have to get it finished for the opening day. And I was adamant, we're definitely getting this finished for the opening day. And I remember on the last hours of the last day before the opening day, we had dozens of volunteers, but then everybody finished and they had to go home. And we hadn't finished this landscaping. And I was absolutely dead beat. I was exhausted. And I knew that if we just had another couple of volunteers for 2 hours, we could complete it. But without it, it would not be complete. And I would feel defeated. So I sat down and I prayed, Lord, you're the God of the impossible. Nothing is impossible for you. This is your building. This is your project. You called this project into being. You have all the resources for it. Lord, we need to complete this landscaping for the opening tomorrow morning. All I need is 2 volunteers for 2 hours. Nothing's impossible for you. Please can you provide 2 volunteers for 2 hours and we'll get this done. And 5 minutes later, one of the people, actually the first company that took a lease in the building, it's a company who they're found a way to manufacture insulin in a very sustainable way for the third world, and they're not selling to big pharma, so they've had a big breakthrough. So the person who runs the lab turned up. He said, my father's just arrived. He's ex-military. He's just arrived from New Zealand and would like to volunteer to finish this landscaping. So the 2 of us are here. We've only got 2 hours. Could you use us? So we did. And this guy went at it like a train, ex-military. He was a fitness instructor, and it was borrowing a whole lot of stuff in to complete this this landscaping. So I said a prayer of thanks. I said, God, you're really just showing off now. Nothing's impossible for you. We needed 2 people, and you've actually brought them from the other side of the world. You brought them from New Zealand for this purpose. So we completed the job. And so